Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
Welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. I am Bronson Hill, really excited to talk on this topic about stress resiliency, which I think is really important because a lot of us are stressed. We can stress over traffic, we can stress over things at work or stress over things at home. But stress is unhealthy if it's a constant thing or if we have too much stress. If we have no stress in our life, then that's maybe not good either because we're not really growing. But really managing stress in a way that's healthy is really important. There was a recent article from Harvard that came out that said that we lose $151 billion a year due to stress-related illnesses, which is absolutely crazy. My friend Clark Souers, I've known actually for about 10 years, been good friends through church for about 10 years. He runs the Expert Effect, which is a group that does HR consulting as well as has specialists that deal with stress resiliency and other sorts of health related consulting. So I wanted to bring him on. He's been interviewed on major news sources, just an amazing guy. Clark, welcome. How are you today, buddy?
Doing good, Bronson. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here, man. It's really great. I know it's been a little while since we've seen each other, but I'm just so glad your business has done so well. And it's great, always great seeing your family also. Give us a little bit of your background and how it led to you becoming an expert on stress resilience.
Yeah, so it really started at kind of a young age, at about 20 years old, when I was in college. And I just kind of came out of the womb, kind of a type A personality. My hero growing up was Michael J. Fox on Family Ties, if you remember.
Yeah,
I wanted to be a CEO when I was like 8 years old. I kind of had that locked in. So yeah, when I got into college, I had a very stressful time in high school, just wanting to achieve. But in college, it kind of all came to a head where I was going into my junior year, was going to be junior class president, and was going to head up the honor society and trying to get all A's, and started dealing with insomnia at a pretty extreme level, where my body was so revved up, I was so stressed out that I had a really hard time sleeping. So that's when I was just like, something isn't the way it should be. I think during my teenage years, I'd come to the realization like, hey, just being a teenager is stressful and I just got to deal with it. And I kind of had the same philosophy going into college, like this is just what it's like getting older. And hey, being an adult, it'll just be stressful. But I didn't realize what it was doing to my body and whatnot. And my body was sending red alerts left and right of like, you're not in a good space. So I started studying stress and just started going deep and reading as much as I could. And I've become a lifelong learner ever since that point.
Yeah, I know there's a story there. You kind of lived a couple lives. I think at one point, wasn't it a major, I could get this wrong, but a major record label, and you were flying in a jet all over the world, and you were like the head of HR for some very large, or maybe it was a large organization. And then you decided to kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you left. So can you tell us that story?
Yeah. I was working for Anschutz Entertainment Group, live entertainment, music, sports, and such. And the jet thing almost happened, kind of like that movie, Famous. I was slated to go on the company jet with the CEO and a couple executives. And I was like all ready to go that morning, but then I got a text message saying, Clark, you can't join us. We're picking up so-and-so on the way, and we need to have a very pivotal conversation, and we don't want an HR guy on the plane with us. And so I got booted from the jet. But yeah, it was quite the life. It kind of felt like a dream job because I love sports and I love entertainment, and I thought I really liked HR as a profession. So yeah, it did feel like a dream scenario.
Yeah. Now, I this is a topic I've been really interested in. I mean, stress resilience is one thing, but just resilience as a whole. I do cold plunging. I just did a Spartan race yesterday where I was at Big Bear running around and high elevation, and it was challenging, and I'm sore today. But doing things that basically allow us to have greater resilience, right? So they create a physical stress or some other thing, but it reduces kind of the emotional stress. But can you give us a kind of a framework for how to think about stress? And I guess for most people a lot of people I know, they're stressed about work, they're stressed about traffic, they're stressed about their family or worried about their kids. Like what are some things that most people should know that would maybe a couple of things could be helpful about stress in general?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up like the Spartan race and all of that. So maybe before we hone in on the topic of stress in general, just the physical aspect of how, exercise can affect stress positively. And I remember you and we actually did an adventure race together where we went through the mud, right, back in the day. And so I think with that, there's certain people that are wired for going big, like you with the Spartan race and such. And for you, it probably really takes you out of the stress response because it's tapping your adrenaline, your body is firing on all cylinders. But what's interesting is that for some people that could tank their body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have kind of come to this kind of thing in culture where like the more exercise, the better. CrossFit,
Right.
this P90X or whatever it is, right?
Right.
You go big, and it's like, hey, the more you do, the more you lift, the more endurance you do, the better. But that's actually not the case.
It could be too much. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we found that for every individual, we have such complex bodies. And then we also go through different seasons of life. So the best thing we can do is to figure out how, what is the best exercise and activity that our body needs in that season, or just for us as an individual. And that might look different than other people around us.
Right.
Yeah. So you can actually tap technology for this. Technology is so readily available to us nowadays. There's something called the Omega Wave, and it's an app that you can get, but then you also order some specialized equipment that you like electrodes and such. It's only about $110. And then you can test your cumulative stress levels and your athletic readiness. I actually found out about this through one of the soccer teams that was with it, AEG. They were doing it for the team. It wasn't readily available to the public there. And they were figuring out who to play by where their body was at. Who should they start? Who is in athletic peak performance?
Right.
So this is something that's now readily available to all of us. So, we can kind of see how our body is doing with the stress that we're placing on it through exercise. And then we can decide, like, how big should I go? Is just like a 1 mile run going to be better than a 4 mile run? Or is yoga, which you and I have done before, which we love, is that going to be better during certain seasons? Or is our body telling us, hey, you need to restore today, you should do no physical activity? And so it's really interesting that exercise, it can either put our body into a state of stress, or it can take our body out of a state of stress. And there's a real art form to figuring out what that is for each individual.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think too, if somebody is not, let's say there's a time in my life, 6 years ago, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I just, for me, doing yoga was really hard, but like now yoga is easy, but like running stuff, that's it's funny how like, it's interesting just where we're at in life can affect where we want to go. But it's how, when we stress our bodies in some ways, just the benefits, whatever it is, whether it's going on a walk or it's doing push-ups or just doing something physically, but it is important that there's definitely not a one size fit all for that. But it is interesting how some stress, even if it's just a little bit in our bodies, can reduce our stress emotionally.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Actually, 11 years ago, I actually was concerned I had a heart condition. Thankfully, I didn't. But I was always like hardcore mountain biker, just go straight up the hills nonstop. And I was finding all of a sudden, like my heart rate would be going so crazy high when I was going up the hills. So I went to a heart doctor. I'm like, what's going on with me? And come to realize after doing all the testing, which was so fun, I had a newborn child. I was 3 months in, and I had tanked my adrenal glands by being an entrepreneur and not getting any sleep. And so I had put my body into that. And so my body during that period of lacking sleep during those early childhood years, I actually needed to take that out of the equation because my heart rate was just skyrocketing by doing an activity I'd done my whole life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The body is so fascinating. I was just listening. I've been doing these Spartan races, and I tell my coach a couple weeks ago, I was like, I just don't feel motivated. I have a coach that kind of helps me now on this. And he said, you should listen to this guy named David Goggins. Do you know who David Goggins is?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
He's this guy. He has this book called "He Can't Hurt Me." He used to be like a Navy SEAL and like super ultra marathon runner, 100 mile. His body's falling apart and this and that. His legs are broken and he finishes running, whatever. But it's like there seems like there's some balance of like having to be that versus like, oh, just like, oh, I'm gonna go for a walk today. Like there's somewhere in between. It's just finding that balance, which can be tricky, and it's different in different times in different areas of life. But on that thought of, I mentioned my coach, that I have a coach in a certain area. You actually do coaching, and you've got a team of people that actually coach for the areas of stress resilience. What are some reasons somebody would want to get a coach? Is it somebody that had, maybe, I don't know, I guess they had some health issues related to stress, or is it more holistic? Because I know you do some of that as well. It's like, hey, I'm overweight, so I have high blood pressure, and stress affects me this way, so I need both like tools to manage the stress, and I might need like a fitness coach to kind of help me get it back in shape, or maybe even somebody to help me eat better or things like that. So talk to us about the holistic approach. If somebody just listening is like, man, I just really want to make a change. I'd love to lose, 30, 40 pounds, whatever. Like what are the steps to kind of get that going with a specialist?
Yeah. So, I think people can be in two kind of categories. One is where we kind of realize like something is awry and we need to improve a certain area. But then we do find that we have some individuals that they are kind of rocking it in different areas, and they've really kind of mastered how to approach work or life, and they're just doing it really well. But especially on the work front, if they're doing it really well, they're going to get rewarded for that by added stress. Like for yourself, you've been doing this several years now, helping investors around the world, and you're really good at what you do. So your stress levels, the amount of stress that you're under, 2 years ago, 4 years ago versus now, it's probably higher because you're really successful at what you do. And so there are those individuals that they're doing really well, and they're like, I'm kind of firing in all cylinders. But when you fast forward, because they're so good at what they do, the stakes are going to be higher, the stress levels are going to be higher, the deals are going to be higher. And so we also like kind of preparing them of how can we make your mind even more resilient to stress and your body even more resilient to stress, so that when those inevitable stressors get higher, it's not going to affect you as much and take you out. So it can be kind of that like, yeah, I know what I need to work on. I'm not able to do it on my own. I need an outside influence. Or it could be like, I'm doing well, but I just want to get my body and mind in an even better place. And so that's when we bring in our team, and people can go through kind of, like you said, a holistic process. I, by nature, am a life coach, executive coach. That's something that I started doing about 15 years ago. And I was just doing it that way. I'm like, life coaching, executive coaching solves everything. I'm your guy, or our executive coaches are your,
got it all.
People. But then I realized when it comes to stress, like you said, it's such a complex thing. So I'm like, an executive coach can't do it all. So let's bring in some other experts. So we have a performance psychology expert, that is really trained on cognitive change and mindsets and such. We have, and just how to take performance to the next level. And then we have a time effectiveness expert, and they're going to focus on how can you really manage your time and be effective with it. Because a lot of times if if that area is askew, it's going to affect our stress.
Right.
We have some relationship experts that can help people with relationships, so those aren't reducing our energy. And then on the body side, we do have like a strength and conditioning person that can kind of help someone figure out like what is the thing that my body needs to become more resilient to stress, so that I don't put it in overdrive. Then a nutritional intelligence expert, and then also someone who can look at the kind of body as a whole. So like a naturopathic expert who can really look at the physiological and chemical makeup of the body and make some strides to improve that. So we find that people can do it on their own nowadays if they have the motivation, because there's so much information out there. But my philosophy is like 45 minutes, with our nutritional intelligence expert, you can get from her customized solution what you could get from, maybe 20 hours of podcasts, and try to do it on your own. So I think people can do it on their own. But there is something about having an expert come alongside you and walk you through that process, and also kind of help you explore what's getting in the way. Because sometimes we do that in our own brain, it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah, and you're one of the few that I've seen this for. Obviously, I've seen people that, have, there's experts, there's coaches that I, have been involved with, or different areas, or go to therapy and process through things or things like that. But to have all these people together just working on you, and I think there is some collaboration they do together, right? So they'll kind of communicate with each other, so that the diet person, the person who's doing the dietary stuff communicates with the trainer, communicates with this person, and this is kind of like what a lot of athletes have too. And so, especially if somebody becomes, you mentioned, yeah, we were raising, we were doing this a few years ago, and now we're having, more stress in the sense of more deals or bigger things or more employees or this kind of stuff. And I know a lot of our listeners are high performance people. And so it could make sense to have a team of people working with you. I'm just curious, not necessarily pitching your thing, but like as a ballpark, you have different packages, but what is it, if somebody's, is this like $100,000 to do this, or is it kind of reasonable to say, I've got this team of people that are kind of like my coaches that help me through this in these different areas?
Yeah, we try to keep it reasonable. People keep telling me like, hey, you could jack up your prices, and the high performers are going to want to, if you charge more, they're going to want to use you more. But I haven't gone there, because I want this to be something that, people don't have to shell out tons of money just because. So yeah, we make it really reasonable. $1,900 to go through the process one time. And so that's 3 sessions with a performance psychology expert, and then 5 sessions with these other experts. The performance psychology expert kind of really kind of acts for that continuity, pulling it all together. They do the first session, a check-in session, and then the final session. So yeah, and then someone might go through the process a second time. But we do find that people's stress resiliency, as we've measured it, it does improve after they've gone through the process just once. Or some people would be like, hey, yeah, like an athlete is like, you know what, I'm doing well on diet and all of that, but my performance psychology expert, I want to go big with them and meet with them on a consistent, this long term.
Right. And I'm not, I'm not a partner with Clark or anything on this. I just think it's interesting because, when we can find a way, if we're producing a lot in our lives by making small changes or having some revelation, like you said, we're really paying for time. We could listen to 20 hours of podcasts, which would be great, but it really might be like somebody who does this all the time who's like, oh, well, you just need to change this in your diet and this problem will be taken care of. Or you need to do this here. And it's like being able to pay for those things. I used to be growing up, I was really frugal. We went to garage sales and thrift stores and all this. And now like I'm realizing like it's worth paying for things that actually can help my life and reduce my stress or get me, performing better in athletics or just in life. But I do think it is interesting too, that as we look at life, you can compartmentalize and think, oh, I'm doing really well at work, or I'm doing really well in my business, or I'm doing really well with my family, whatever. But if these things are not all working together, that one bad area can like totally affect the others. So that's why I think it is good to have a holistic approach on all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of got the lesson from my parents on kind of investing in the body. I was a kid that just had I was having health issues at like 7 or 8 years old, chronic ear infections, strep throat, that kind of stuff. And they actually took me to a holistic doctor, and we would go, every 2 weeks. We drove about 45 minutes because he was the best of the best. And like, he got me on the health track. And, we took supplements that our body actually needed. And so I saw them investing with me at an early stage. Because, man, our mind and body, if it starts going awry, we just can't perform at the same levels. And a lot of times we just attribute it to like, I'm getting older and I'm just going to deal with it. But they kind of set that pattern in motion. And I love kind of just debunking the myth that as we get older, our brain's going to get less sharp. We're going to get, we're going to get, our bodies aren't going to be as, we can't do what we used to do. And I think you're a testament to that, you're probably healthier than you were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely am.
When we first met, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel the same way. I'm like feeling better at 50, which I just crossed the big milestone.
Happy 50th, man. You don't look 50. You look like you're 30, bro. So, but that's always been the case for you. So
yeah. Yes. Always had the young face, and I am loving it now. But it's cool. It's just so cool that we don't just have to believe that things are going to get worse as we age, that, no, we can actually perform better and be more mentally agile and deal with the stress better.
So I know your attitude towards stress is really important. I heard a conversation, I think during COVID, the Los Angeles area, you were interviewed on a TV station, like a news station. And I think it was a major like NBC or one of those big stations, but you were saying our attitude when it comes to facing stress. So if we know we're going to go through something difficult, just our own attitude or approach toward that is really, it's either helpful or it harms us, kind of how we go through that. But what kind of attitude, if we know we have something stressful or something comes up, like what's a good reframe to be able to go through that in a healthy way?
Yeah, let me ask you this. I know you have a lot of investors that tune in to this podcast. What would be like the biggest stressor that an investor would face? And we can kind of do a little mini case study here.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. I think, there's stresses in life, but I think specifically as an investor, let's say you've invested 100K in a deal and you find out there's a problem with the investment. Maybe there's a risk of, the investment being lost, or there's a capital call situation where people are having to like put more money in or something like that, where there's just this money that you've put into a deal. That's like, I guess, as an investor, that's one of the biggest concerns I have, right? Is that I invest in something and either it gets lost or, they just mismanage something or something uncontrolled happened. All of a sudden you lost your money. Like that would be like a big fear, right?
Yes. All right. So this is real. And money is something that can put us into a state of fear, and it can activate that stress response, like nothing else, because our minds associate that with danger. And that's what our stress response is for. When we sense danger, we go into the stress response and it helps us out. But yeah, it can put us into a state of constant stress and just the mental stress. So even subconsciously, even while we're sleeping, that's why some of the people out there, you might, wake up and you're like, my jaws are a little sore. I must be grinding my teeth at night. And it could be that deal that went awry. You're stressing about it, even when you're supposed to be in rejuvenation mode. And so, yeah, really the way we look at the stress. So, one is it can be seeing it as a challenge. And that could be like, it's not over yet. There is a way, even if it's a small percentage, that we could overcome this hurdle and we could get back on track with this investment. And so there you're seeing it as a challenge. And rather than getting into the fear mode, it's like, okay, this is a challenge. I've done these challenges before, and you actually get excited about the challenge. And then that's releasing different hormones into your body and not doing all the negative effects that could be coming.
So you're just saying, yeah, the one I wanted to highlight from that was that's the exact quote I remember, is that by our attitude, if we look at it, not something we should be terrified going through, but it's something that like we're going to get stronger as we go through this, almost like this is like a workout, or this is like something that's actually adding to us rather than just being a total terror or fear of loss thing.
Yes, exactly. And then is also just kind of bringing in hope, that this is one of many deals, that the investor is going to do throughout the course, in the years ahead. And so that even if there is a hurdle here, there's going to be other deals that are so wildly successful that'll make up for this. So yeah, I think just kind of getting in that different mindset can really be helpful.
So a couple more questions, Clark, before we wrap up. What's one thing you wish you'd known sooner about stress? Is there something that like, oh man, like for most people, maybe they don't know that like, if I knew this, it would have helped my life a lot, or I wish I had known this sooner about dealing with stress.
Yeah, I think, it's talked about a lot nowadays, but it just wasn't in the past. But that is just how narratives can affect us, kind of what's going through our head. And we have narratives that have just been shaped over a lifetime from a young age. And those narratives get locked in, and that adds a load of stress. And so just being able to have awareness on what am I believing about this situation? What am I believing about myself, et cetera, et cetera. And then being able to start thinking differently. Because if we can think differently, that affects our emotions, and then our emotions affect our behaviors. And really, stress at the end of the day, it's just negative emotions gone haywire.
Right.
So if we really can change our narratives about relationships, about work, about all the different things, and it can take some doing because we have to rewire our brain. But we do have that neuroplasticity, so we can start thinking differently, and we don't have to think the way we always have. We can start thinking differently. And so, yeah, especially if someone's a new investor, man, got to do some rewiring of the brain to be able to think like an investor, because most people can't think like it, and it adds so much stress. So if you're, been investing for a couple of years and you're feeling like this is just too stressful, you could actually rewire your brain by changing the narratives to get in a better space long term.
Yeah, it really is amazing how our feeling, or I guess our beliefs really, and how we think about things, they affect how we feel, and they affect how we approach things. And a lot of times if we want to change how we feel, we've got to change a belief, because a lot of times, like, I've had a belief that, oh, I have to be perfect in this area, or this has got to go this way for me to be. And it's like, when I evaluate it, I'm like, well, where did that come from? And it usually comes from family of origin stuff, or somebody said something, or I internalized something. But then you realize, like, man, this is totally like an unnecessary stress that I'm just adding to myself. And if I just change that belief, I don't have to be stressed, or I don't have to worry about that. And I've watched it. There was an investor I'm thinking of, and I'm not going to give away their identity, but they had a couple deals that they got scammed out of, or something happened, whatever. And so we had a deal recently. Right now in real estate, it's a tough time. So we have a deal that's got, it's going to be fine, but there's a struggle going on in one of our deals. And it was like the response that they had was just like, oh my gosh, but it was like they were right back there, and they'd rehearsed, or it was like this emotional thing that had brought them right back there. And so it's unfortunate how sometimes either something traumatic that's happened, we kind of relive that, or we just haven't really processed through it. And so this now, even though it's not the same thing, feels like everything that happened back then.
Yes, right. So true. It brings it all front and center.
Yeah.
But that's a good warning sign. Like, we got to deal with that going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like an invitation, right, that we need to work on.
There you go.
Clark, what sort of books or resources, just in general, would you recommend about stress resilience? Do you have any recommends as far as books to read, or anything that's out there that could be helpful?
Yeah. The one that I really like is it was written by the same people that wrote The Inner Game of Tennis.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's about getting in a flow state. So they've actually written a book on about 6-7 years ago on the inner game of stress, and it's got a lot of great insights in there. And then, yeah, I really do feel like it's such a personal thing where, there's some kind of things out there like, I want a good book on, traveling, and, someone will recommend it and it resonates with the majority of people out there. But when it comes to stress, I feel like it's such a customized thing that each person is so different. It's hard to just kind of have this blanket statement of, you got to read this. So I typically like, hey, what are you as an individual facing? And then, hey, maybe here's a good read for you, or a way, that you could tackle it on your own. It's kind of that customized thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Clark, I just wanted to say, I so appreciate you over the years, your friendship, who you are, but this is just, how you operate. You always seem pretty even keel. I'm sure you have things that stress you out too, but you're a great kind of model of how to operate in that, and just to really be a healthy person. So I really appreciate that. If people want to reach out or want to connect, what's a good way to get in touch with you?
Just our website, experteffect.com. It's a good spot. We got little videos on there, and then also you can connect with me just through our info email address. But yeah, I am on LinkedIn as well, and we have an Instagram page too. So yeah, happy to help out anyone in your network, and they can just reach me through one of those avenues.
Awesome, brother. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you chatting. Look forward to hopefully seeing you soon.
Sounds great, Bronson. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks, man. Okay, so you may be wondering what this has to do with mailbox money, or what it has to do with investing in general. But I think temperament, and I think just being able to manage your own stress is really important. I think that if you're somebody who gets really stressed out all the time, you get frazzled, your quality of life is going to be way lower, right? You're not going to have the same quality of life as somebody who's just, we all know people like this, they get really stressed and whatever, but there's also people you may know that are just, nothing phases them, right? They can just let things roll off. They just don't get bothered by things. Typically the second type of person who can let things roll off, they will live a longer life, they'll live a happier life, they'll be a more successful life. and they'll just be able to handle things better. And it's something that we can learn how to do. So just because I get stressed out easily or you do, doesn't mean that has to be the way it's going to be forever. So these are tools and skills that we learn. We can teach them to our kids, and really it just makes life become more manageable, more fun. And really, you know, as Mark Twain, I believe, said, the first wealth is health, right? So if you're just healthy, obviously I'm into health with my Spartan races and my cold plunges. I just moved my cold plunge to 33 degrees, which is a little intense, but for me, I enjoy it, right? It's because I know it's stressing my body, but it's making me stronger. My body's stronger as well as my emotions stronger. So hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, just really trying to add value to your life. We're really looking at helping people develop passive income, which really leads to financial freedom, but it's also about life freedom, right? It's also about finding ways that you can become more happy, more free, more open. So love to know what you got out of this. Share a comment or share this with a friend. We appreciate you taking the time to educate yourself, and look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.